Hey, hello everybody. Sorry I got off to a little bit of a late start this morning. This stream, this now. Hey Luke Rom, thank you for the heads up. Yes, I did know I hadn't started the stream yet. Just running a little bit behind. All the audio checking out okay? Everything sounding all right? Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. Yeah, everything looks fine. Okay. Hey, Lemon Bud. How you doing tonight? I am going to be finishing the Manticore. So we've got a couple irons in the fire right now, as far as things that we could be painting. And I've got a couple of these little guard guys here. Those little thugs, ruffians. About 3 of those that I hadn't finished painting. I ended up not needing them for the game that I was playing the other day. And then we started on the Manticore yesterday, because I was bored. Didn't want to do the boring little ruffians anymore. That's how you get a great pile of unpainted minis. Yeah, Jerry, if you're cool with me calling you by your name, I'm cool with calling you by it, but typically I like to just refer to somebody as their handle, unless they say it's cool to call them by their name. Just internet courtesy. So yeah, we got this Manticore here that we're gonna paint. We're gonna finish up. Let's see here. We're definitely gonna clean up the Manticore. We don't have much left on it. Definitely gonna finish him up. Let's see right here. I apologize. Bear with me one moment. I need to move this mic. There we go. It's getting in my way. I'd repositioned it because I was using it for a work meeting earlier today. When I use it on this side of my desk versus the other side where I work, this arm just does not stretch very well. I need to get a better boom arm for it. So yes, Manticore. This little crazy boy. We definitely need some stuff. Let's go ahead and pull up our reference image real quick. We'll go ahead and finish doing this. There's our reference image. Thank you. I think you meant ambient, but it was quite ambitious of a project to get that music working. Let me tell you what. I actually wrote this music on a Eurotrack synthesizer. My original plan was to just have the synthesizer running in the background and randomly, procedurally generating music for the show, so that I could always have, some fresh tunes, and then I would just tweak the machine and let it come up with some new stuff as the show goes on. But come to find out, my poor little old MacBook does not have the gumption to play, to run the whole OBS setup and everything, and synthesize music at the same time. It kind of boils down to a Mac audio issue I've had where it will the audio will stutter. It'll crack and pop. It'll be like whenever the CPU gets bogged down a little bit, or when I think I noticed it when it swaps between tasks. Like if you've had a program up for a while, or away for a while, and you open it back up and it starts popping and cracking, and it just sounds terrible, absolutely atrocious. So what I ended up doing was I ended up taking this and this Eurotrack synthesizer, and I just just let it record for 2 or 3 hours. Let it record for 2 and 3 hours, and then I just play the song. So yes, I did make the music. It is nice and ambient. Was also a very ambitious project because making these things in Eurotrack synthesizers is complicated. So we're going to, let's get it over on this side. So we got the lion in the middle, we got the goat on his left, stage left. Yes, stage left. And then the dragon head on his right. And I think the wash turned out okay. I think we have some nice shadows, especially here around the mane on the lion. But I think we need to get some highlights on its face. Its nose needs to be black. Also, the inside of its mouth, around its lips and stuff, are black. At least according to that reference image over there. Got to do its claws. Probably gonna just leave the eyes. These eye slits are just so narrow. They have so much protrusion around them that it's gonna be difficult to get a brush inside there. So I might just leave them as dark. Also, they're animalistic eyes. You don't really want, well, I say don't really, but if you want a creature to look sentient, like it's alive, and aware of its surroundings and has intelligence behind it, give them pupils. If you don't, just make them solid, and it makes them look vacant and animalistic. Chimeras only have a 4 intelligence, I think. It's pretty low. It's kind of it's on the animal instinct side. So I'm going to leave their eyes like that, so it doesn't project awareness. The goat, I want to do some stuff with the horns to differentiate it from the rest of the fur. But I like the wool on the goat part so far. Also, we need to do something with these hooves. We might need to make these hooves a little darker. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's get our details on. We've already done the base coat and the wash, and a little detailing around here. But we're going to finish the detailing, and then maybe do some edge highlighting. Once we get the edge highlighting done, then we should be pretty well finished. I think we need to. This base is looking a little mucky. I think the black that I used was a little watered down. Didn't cover very well. So we can actually put the washes away, and let's get some black. Let's start with the lion. You got to start somewhere. Yes, they are FDM bases because they are cheap. Filament is cheaper than resin. That was a trick that I picked up from Ike. It's to do FDM bases and then make the mini out of resin. You know what? I've actually got, tonight's the for funsies night. Tonight's not the monster manual night. But I figured since this was so close to finishing that we'd go ahead and finish it up. I've actually got some other DM prep stuff that I need to do. I need to finish a character book for Caleb. I finally got the leather, and I finally got the book back that I accidentally left with him last time. And so I need to leather bind. It's not really binding, but I need to finish putting the leather on his character book. I also, there was something else. What was it? Something else. Having a hard time remembering. Oh, we're going to be doing a Hydra. Glazing spot putty? What is that? I am unfamiliar with this wizardry you speak of. Because yes, you're right. It does show the layer lines a little bit. Once it's completely painted, it really doesn't show up that bad. So like for example, this one here, it's got a nice thick coat. It's dusty. Like if you look at it in the light, you can still see the layer lines a little bit. But I'm not familiar with glazing spot putty. I'm going to get some of this darker tan in here. I'm going to darken it up on our hand palette. We're going to hit these hooves. Oh, okay. Good old Bondo. I had a friend who used to swear one day he would make a car out of Bondo and JB Weld. These paints are kind of watered down. Whenever when you use the wet palette, it's supposed to help your paints last longer. I kind of have mixed results, but it might just because I'm using crappy paint. Because it'll absorb water over the couple days that it's sitting dormant and just make them really goopy, really liquidy and watered down. But with this, we're using that watered downness to kind of preserve some of the shadows that the wash has already put on these hooves, and just painting or tinting. It's almost making it act a bit like a glaze, like we're just layering some color on it. I'll have to check that stuff out, Lemon Bud. I kind of don't want to put too incredibly much post-processing into these bases. Like this is a base that I printed recently that I just sanded the top a little bit. I normally don't process them too much, and this one turned out, great. The eyes are normally pointing towards the mini anyway. Am I weathering? No. Weathering is typically when you give... Man, this stuff is way too thin. I'm going to have to just soak some of this up and put some regular old black on here. Weathering is when you like do some techniques to make something look artificially old, or like to create the appearance of old. I might weather something if I were to be making something that looks old. But I don't, you know, like a Chimera is not going to be weathered, essentially. The bases, I also leave them relatively plain. I might make them fancy in the future. Sometimes I'll put like flocking and grass and stuff like that on it. But for the most part, I kind of leave them just flat black, so that they can simulate being in any kind of terrain. You know, if you have a mini that's sitting in some grass tiles that you've made, or cave tiles that you've made, and it's got a snowy base, or if it's in cave tiles and it's got like flowers and stuff around the base, that can, to me, that's off-putting. I know some people that doesn't bother them because it's like the theme of the creature or whatever, but that just kind of puts me off. So no, not really any weathering per se. Let's see, this nose, it looks like it's like a little triangle, but then like the lips under the nose fade into like a white almost. And this goes down the cleft palate. So if we get this finished, I might do a quick go at the character book just to get that bound real quick and done. And then we can start working on the Hydra. So the Hydra is going to be a big project. It's a huge creature. So in D&D, there are different size categories. Most humanoids, like between 4 to 6 feet tall, are considered medium size. They abstract it just to make it easier. Thank you. I hope it looks good. I don't really shoot for that great. Table ready is what I'm going for, just because of the volume of stuff that I'm trying to paint. But so you start off at like medium, and then large would be, you know, something like around 10 feet tall-ish. But then huge is like, you know, the size of a school bus. And so this Hydra is going to be huge. I have... Ooh, that pink turned out good on its tongue. So for example, this is a character, right? That's medium sized. This is a young white dragon. That's large size. So here's this little guy. This is Castile. He's a humanoid. That's a large creature. And large could actually be bigger than this. It just would like fit on the dais, like on the base, like this Chimera. Like this is a large creature too. And then this is a huge creature. And they could actually be big, like the size categories, at least the way that I'm scaling them. Ooh, excuse me. They can like overhang the base a little bit. So you can see like this Bahir could like wrap itself around this Chimera, you know, a good number of times, and strangle it. Same thing with this. Here's an example of one of the bases that I did. It looks like dirt and rock and stuff. So you can kind of see that compared to the dragon. Ooh, we're getting a little choppy. Let me plug my Yeah, these are the goals. This is like one of the nicer ones that I have. Oh, oh, getting choppy. Pause this, and we'll go over USB, please. That should help with the choppiness. My camera normally streams over Wi-Fi just because it's more convenient where it's placed. But there we go. Obviously USB is a little better. Uh-oh. Luke Rom, can you help out with that? We don't need big follows. We don't care about big follows. So the Hydra is going to be a huge character, but it's going to be big. Like it's probably going to be like that tall, and its heads are going to be like off at the front like that. It's going to be pretty big. And since it is a bit more of an ambitious project, it's going to take a little doing to get there. I think Luke Rom is doing something. Go ahead and ban these guys real quick. What a world. Why? Whoever thought that bots were a good idea? I mean, like spam bots are a good idea. This is why we can't have nice things. Okay. So let's go ahead and get a little bit of this black and a tan. Get us a nice darker brown. Yeah, those hubs turned out. Okay. We'll use the same thing for their horns. We'll just dirty them down a little bit. So it's probably going to take a good 4 hours to print that Hydra, or to print each part of it. I've already looked at it a little bit, and I think I'm going to be, it's got 6 heads, a tail, and a body. So I'm probably going to have to print it on 4 separate plates. The body will fit on 1 plate, which is good. I have a photon 0, and that things tend to be sized already and chopped up for a photon, so I normally have to manually split things up. But I think I'll be able to get the body done on 1 plate, and then, yeah, those horns look a lot better like that. These spines are too bright. I'm gonna do these spines in the same color. Then I should be able to get like 3 heads to another plate, 3 heads to another plate, and then probably the tail on its own plate. So I think it'll work out okay. But that means that it's gonna be printing for a long time. A lot of folks don't realize how much time goes into preparing your models before you even start to paint them. You're probably more aware of that though, Lemon Bud. You know how much prep it takes to the work that you have to do before you actually start working on something. You got any plans for tonight? You tinkering around on anything? Hey, I might be able to do that. If I can get caught up on my backlog. I got a lot of stuff to paint. When we swap over to the screen share and start doing supports on the Hydra, I'll show you my spreadsheet. Because I have a lot of stuff to paint. All right, let's do some edge highlighting. So what we're gonna do with this, when I base coat, I like to keep it simple when I'm painting minis. Table ready, that's what I care about. This isn't gonna be like a set piece or a piece of art. It is a piece of art, and it will be like on a shelf somewhere, but it's not gonna be like that kind of piece of art on that kind of shelf somewhere. Is what you do is you just kind of, I base coat in a specific color, then I wash it, which darkens the whole thing down, and then I highlight certain areas with the same color, so it makes it look like a highlight again. Nope, never done any rough and bub. Buff and rub. Wow, rub and buff. Never done any rough and bub. It's my Wolverine impersonation. He's the only person I know who says bub. I've seen you use it to great effect. You know, you really inspire me in 3D printing. I remember when I first got into it, and I got my 3D printer and just started like printing kunais and other, you know, wacky, silly stuff. It was kind of like a novelty, and I kind of got into it, and I was like, oh man, look at all the possibilities. And then you got into it, and you just like went ham. Like you just went full on gonzo, just in on it. And I was like, dang, like there's a lot more stuff that you can do with 3D printing than I didn't realize. Because I had mostly gotten one just to try it out, just to experiment with it. And my brain initially went down like the functional side. Like I had a bathroom, like a shower stall, that the drain plug in the middle broke, and so I had like gotten out some calipers and sized a thing and like printed a drain plug that just fit it, like a drain grill almost. And I was like, man, this is really useful. This is great. I had like a bookshelf that had some feet that broke, and it was one of those. Like it had a metal bolt with like a foot around the end, and it would screw in, and so the plastic part had broke, and I went ahead and like printed another one and screwed it through the bolt through there and just screwed it back in. And I was like, you know, this is pretty rad that you can just fix stuff yourself and manufacture parts yourself. I made phone holders that would, for my van and my other vehicles, that would like slot into the CD tray, so you would just like slide it in there, and then you could click your phone in, and that was really cool. But then you were doing like all sorts of crazy stuff, more of the artistic side, and it really kind of opened up my eyes to a lot of what you can do with D&D. Yeah, you've gone big. See, I like with my stuff, I got smaller. I ended up settling into like D&D miniatures and whatnot, and you went full on big boy. Like between you and me, you're gonna you're gonna print a car first. Me, I'll probably print the key for it. I do want to print some bigger stuff, but the problem is that my 3D printer is so old. It just doesn't hold up to like modern printers. I have to fiddle with it so much. Yeah, because you're going to print a car. I'll print the key that goes in the car. I just lost my train of thought. Forget what I was saying. Oh, what was I talking about? Man, I don't even remember. That lion's mouth looks weird. Looks like a teddy bear. I think he needs some fangs of some kind. I'm gonna feather this out a little bit too. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you did. Like the little key cards. All right. Let's get some nice solid white on here. And let's hit these teeth. Oops. I think that there are some supports left over on some of these teeth that I missed. I'm going to take care of that real quick. Well, it's easy to focus on small details when your things are so small. I have a big boy that I need to paint, and it got intimidating very quickly because of how big it was. Give me a second, I'll show you. Goodness. So, like I was talking about with size categories in D&D, you've got medium, you've got large, you've got huge, and you can have gargantuan. And gargantuan is very, very big. Gargantuan essentially means from a certain size and up. So, whether it is the size of a 3-story building or the size of the moon, it is gargantuan. This is a purple worm. And I've only base coated it because when I put the purple on, it took like half a bottle of purple, or like a quarter of a bottle of purple. It took a lot. And I was like, I do not know how to paint a big thing in this much detail. But for size comparison, this is our Chimera. And this is our little player. It's pretty big. He fits in the mouth. And another thing is that this is half of the mini. Purple worms are so big, the other half is underground. And I actually have stuff to print off that is the tail coming up out of the ground. So you could have like this up on this side, and then the tail coming up out of the other side, and the rest of it's underground type thing. And then the tail can like pop out and like strike to attack and stuff. But yeah, this thing's gargantuan. Like when the minis are small, it's easy to kind of, at least for me, it's easy to wrap my head around the details, and to like point out things like teeth and the nose and the eyes, and just make sure that they look okay. But when it comes to like a really big thing, like these sections, like 3 of these sections are as big as like one of these minis that I'm used to painting. So it's like, do I focus on that, or do I just focus on it at a macro scale and don't worry about the small details? I haven't really been able to wrap my head around how to do a big piece like that, where to start. Like normally I like to, when I'm base coating, I move so quickly over an area painting it that I move quickly, because if you paint with acrylics and then stop halfway and then it dries and you come back and paint and they overlap, sometimes it will leave like a line, some coverage, and that was like starting to happen on the worm because it was so big that it was. It's really not though, man. Like, it looks cool because of the spectacle of it, but like you can see like the highlight. This was before I had an airbrush, like where I just painted on some white and then this translucent purple. It kind of shows through and makes a little bit of a highlight, but like the teeth are like this nasty brown. The tongue came out okay, but like I don't know. It's a decent foundation. It has a lot of work. Like, it's literally 3 colors. It's purple, brown, and red. Like, that's it. It needs some love. It doesn't have hardly any shadows, and it needs some highlights that are better. But I mean, I've printed and painted some better stuff. Like this one, I printed on an FDM. And I did like some weathering, because, you know, like if it was rainy, it would get on here and then leak onto the fabric and stuff. And this is just like nasty old whole bunch of layer lines. You know, little airship for guys to adventure in. That one turned out okay-ish. But I kind of feel better about being lazy with FDM stuff, because like it already looks crappy because of the layer lines, and so I don't mind if the paint job is a little crappier too, because then it like fits, like the quality of it fits together. All right, recenter on the painting. We have the goat head is done. I did his tongue, his horns. Did some highlighting on his top of his head. Got his hooves. Got the lion's claws. His face, I think, is better now. The dragon part. We need some, like, dry brushing on this guy. Let's see what we got in here. Where's one of my dry brushes? There we go. Use you. No, not you. We'll use you. Yeah, that little ship is really fun. I haven't gotten to use it in game yet. That's the thing, is like I spend time on stuff and I'm like, oh man, this is gonna be great, and then it never shows up in the story. It just sits on my shelf. I haven't been able to use the purple worm either, believe it or not. I should just throw it at somebody and they're like, why are you doing this to me? It's because I worked on it and I want to put it on the table, dag nabbit. What did I use for this other red dragon? Because it's kind of like a goldish, yellowish trim. I don't think that's gold. It doesn't look reflective. I think it's just kind of like a yellow dry brush. But it's not going to be something vibrant. What if we go a little bit of red? Thank you, I actually didn't print that one. And a little bit of this orange. You probably remember, but like a long time ago, for one of those competitions we did at work, I got a subscription box to Loot Crate. And one of the crates that I got in was D&D themed. And this was like before I actually got into D&D, really. Let's try this. Yeah, that's hitting some highlights. And there was a mini in there for a red dragon. And I was like, hey, you know, that's kind of neato. I think it even had like a D20 with it. And I was like, cool, you know, I got a D20 now. And then when I started playing D&D, I didn't really use minis. So one of the things that you can do if you'd like to get into D&D and you don't, you know, haven't invested in minis or don't really care about minis, the barrier to entry is very low for playing and getting into D&D. The ceiling is very, very high. You know, you can build a room and a table and, you know, TV screens with videos playing on them for the maps and all that stuff. But what I did was I used just D4s, which they look like little pyramid dice. And you would just boop, set them on the... Actually, I would also use D6s, which are like Monopoly dice. And I would set them on the table. And so if there's like 5 goblins, I would have like 5 of these little dice. And I would set them to... The number would be up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you could say, I'm going to hit Goblin 4. And, you know... And then you'd know which one they were talking about. But when I got that mini and started playing, that was my big mini, the large mini. So if they went up against something that was like an ogre or like an arrow hawk or something really big and nasty and scary, I would pull out that mini and stick it on the table, and everyone's like, oh no, he's using the dragon mini. That means this thing's really strong and it's really big. And I used that thing for a long time. And then when I finally got to painting minis, I need some more of this orange paint. When I finally got to painting minis, I primed it and highlighted it and painted it. I was like, you know, this guy's, he's been around with me for a long time, and I want to honor him with a good paint job. He used to, I have some pictures. I should show them sometime if I can find them. But yeah, like you can see, it's just like it's not 3D printed. It's, there you go. It says Loot Crate, designed in Los Angeles, Wizards of the Coast, made in China. And it's just like flexible plastic or whatever. But painting his belly was a pain, just because it's like up underneath. But I literally just did like a vibrant yellow in his eyes. This is like my brick red. I use that for base coating. and then some yellow that I can't seem to remember and replicate for brushing his scales. But it used to be literally like this, the whole thing, a solid color, and it had black, like just black dots, like, and like the crappy ones that like were off to the side and in weird spaces. But yeah, man, it's amazing the kind of detail that comes out when you put a little wash on something and do some dry brushing. Some kind of simple techniques. Also, don't highlight red with white. It makes it look pink. Highlight it with yellow or with orange. That's some color theory for you. Light is warm and shadows are cool. So if you're going to put shadows on something, you want to make it a cooler version of that color. If you want to put highlights on something, you want to make it a warmer version of that color. And white is typically cool unless you use an off-white that is specifically warmer. White and black are typically very, very cool colors. So if you had, for instance, a blue thing that you were painting, well, let's just say red. If you're wanting to paint a red thing, you want yellow and orange, because those are like your lighter reds. But then for your shadows, you want like purple, which is a mixture of red and blue. It's like a cooler blue. It just takes the hue of that color and pushes it into the cool side. Just pushes it over and pushes it down a little bit. Make it a little darker because it's shadow. Push it into the blue. I need to get my dadgum minis back in here because I keep wanting to, like, there's been a number of shows where I want to talk about a thing that I did and using it as an example, and I reach back for it and they're gone. They're not back there. But I did, oh, here we go. I did some bushes. So for example, say you use this green as your base coat. You want to put a highlight on it. This green has more yellow in it. It's like a pea green, or like a like, it's not mint. You know how mint is like lighter, but it's more on the blue side? This is like a forest green, which is kind of in the middle of the road of warm and cool. Then this is a cool color. So that's going to be your highlight. You could even like highlight yellow, because, you know, yellow and blue make green. If you push that into the warmer side, it's pushing it more towards yellow. But if you want to shade it, this is like on the blue side. You could push it over here. So cool colors for shadows, warm colors for highlights. And the reason behind that, it's not just like a rule of thumb. Like there's like some reasoning behind it. The reason is that the sun produces very warm light, and shadows don't have, they miss the direct sunlight, right? They are in the shade, and so the only light that is shining on them is the blue light reflected off the sky. At least in a natural environment, you're getting direct sunlight on your target. That's your light bulb. But then you're getting diffused light all over that's being scattered around in the sky. It's hitting the sky and then hitting everything. So the shadows are blue from the sky. Obviously, if you're trying to paint something that like has a light source on it, then that might not be the case. But all of my minis I'm painting, they're inside. I mean, like they're outside. They're like daylight. So it makes sense for that. So instead of thinking of shadows like a darker color, like you just take the value of that paint and slide it down closer to black. Instead of thinking of it like that, think of it like you have the color of the thing. What does it look like when you remove the light, right? So if you take this light and you remove it, it's still getting light from somewhere else. What's the color of the other light sources? So in my little streamer setup, I have a ring light over there. See that? You can see it through my glasses. I have a ring light over there, and then I have this little curly Q USB LED lamp. That's for like a close-up light. And then if I tilt this over a little bit, I have this little desk lamp. It's like a little piano lamp. Used to be on top of my piano, and that has a very warm light. Like these ones are like cold blue LEDs. But this one's a warm light, so it's like if I turn off my ring light and I turn off that LED light, oh, it was already off. You know, that's our light. And so if we have direct light coming down from the top, then our shadows are going to be from the other light. Now imagine if this was backwards. This is actually a little backwards from how I paint these, because my direct light isn't a blue LED light. My direct light is a yellow light. It's like the sun. And then the blue light is from the ambience around from the sky. I could doodle around with this some more, but I think I'm kind of done with it. I think I'm just gonna put on some black on the base, cover up a bunch of them layer lines, get that on there a little thicker. I think we're gonna call it good. This is the For Funsies stream is my D&D stream in general is mostly painting minis, just because that's kind of what I need for D&D. Like my goal is to paint the entire monster manual. But like the For Funsies days, like I'll do DM prep. Sometimes I'll go over my session notes. Sometimes I'll do world building, kind of show the whole process. The idea is to kind of give an example, let you guys peek behind the screens and see what it takes to actually run Dungeons and Dragons and the kinds of things that you can do to elevate your games. I went through showing the character books that I make for my players, which are their character sheets essentially. Instead of a sheet, it's like a book of papers. If you're familiar with Critical Role, some of them use books from The Rook and the Raven, and they're like disc journals with specialized character sheet pages. That's essentially what I do. But I make them myself. I 3D print the rings. Sometimes I purchase them, and then I have a ring punch that I punch the paper with, and then I modified some character sheets that I purchased online that are like really nicely drawn, and customize them for the classes. And so I kind of went through the process of making the character sheets, and I leather bind them because it just makes it look nice. Players like to have things in their hands. They like to have tangible stuff. If you give them, like, if in game, if they receive a letter, like, print the letter out in some fancy script. It doesn't even have to be fancy. Like, you could print it in papyrus. You know, like, use papyrus as your font. And it would still be cooler than just saying you find a letter and it says, "Dear Governor or Governess." You know, give them stuff to put their hands on. They like maps that they can touch. They like different things that they can use, lay their hands on. Props. I have a couple coins that I printed just because I thought it would be silly. I wanted to know what like the D&D coins would look like in real life. Like, how big is a gold coin or a copper coin or a silver coin? So I printed one of each on my FDM printer. spray painted them up, washed them, and I was like, because I in my back of my head I had this idea of it would be really cool to like toss them a bag of gold and then it just like clink clink on the table, and I was like that would be fun, you know, like a guy's like, hey, I got a job for you, and you know, toss a bag of gold, so I made one of each, and I was like, holy crap, this is gonna take 45 days to print off a bag of gold. And then plus painting all of that, like, no way. Like, it's just too much. But I made one of each, and it's been interesting to like have them come up in game, where someone's like, I toss them a coin, and then I'm like, so you toss him like a copper or a silver? He said, I can toss him a silver, and I take the silver coin, and I flip it back. I'm like, he flips it back at you, and he's like, I don't want your money. Get out of here. You know, leave me alone. And just them like catching that coin in the air when I throw it at him was like, I don't know, it just kind of resonated, and I feel like, dang, when he threw the coin back at me, you know, like, and just showing people that, you know, like what the coins look like. Again, they're in my other thing. I'd love to show them, but they're in the other room. So I think I'm happy with them. It's not anything super fancy. It's not one of my best minis. But, it's just a Chimera. It's not a piano. There we go. One more in the bag. We'll put him on the little shelf over there. I need to reposition my camera in a certain way. Get a better setup in here so that I can have like my shelf in the back, so you guys can see it grow as we finish these. I think that'd be fun. I'm gonna scooch over. Roop. Hey there, Ankylosaurus. We can put you right there. Let's shift gears a little bit. Let's get a little real, guys. Let's swap over to which one's my top scene? There we go. I'm glad it was informative, Lemon Bud. I try to be informative. I try to pull the mystery out of it. A lot of this stuff, like, it's things that I just picked up piece by piece here and there. Don't let not knowing stuff keep you from getting started. I was terrified when I first started printing minis, painting them. I just couldn't. It was so paralyzing to start. I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. Oops. I had no idea what I was doing, and I couldn't bring myself to, like, I had this fear of ruining it. And then I had this realization that, you know, I was like, somebody said, I can't remember who it was, somebody who was like good at painting, and I was watching their videos, they were like, if you paint it and you mess up, you just paint over it. Like, you can get, like, if you're using acrylics, you can get like 3 coats, maybe 4 of paint on it before it starts to lose detail. No, like, I appreciate that. I was terrified of it. I was like super worried that I was going to mess it up, and I hate. So one of the things that I absolutely just hate with a passion is doing something, messing it up, and then doing it over again. Like those old Infocom games, and like the old point and click adventures, where you'd get like 30 minutes, like 4 hours into something, and then you find out that you missed the key back at the beginning, and so you have to restart the thing all over. And it's like I used to, like I would just shut the game off, and I'd be like, nah, I'm not doing that all over again. I can't stand that kind of stuff. It's so frustrating. So the idea of painting a mini and then messing it up and having to go through all of the rigmarole of doing it again, it was just a big turn off. I used to play some MUDs. I used to play, I had a multiplayer Zork one that I kind of doodled around in. MUDs are cool. And I still like playing Zork in Infocom games. Like Spellbound? Sorcerer, Enchanter, I think Spellbound was one. But normally when I go back to them, I'll go back to them and kind of dink around with them a little bit, but my interest doesn't hang very long. I don't have the patience like I used to have as a kid. But actually, speaking of MUDs, Lemon Bud, what a good video game analogy of Dungeons and Dragons. Those things were directly derived from Dungeons and Dragons. If you can understand how an Infocom game or a text adventure or a MUD or whatever you want to call it, if you can understand how that works, that's D&D. You walk into a room, right? It doesn't have to be like a physical room. It could be a part of the forest. The text pops up on the screen and says, "You are in the round room. There's a dagger on the floor and 3 bloody stains on the wall, and a troll is looking at you angrily. You tell the dungeon master what you want to do. Take knife." He does some stuff in the background. Okay, you take the knife. Hit knife with troll, or hit troll with knife. You're like, I'm going to attack him. It does some stuff in the math in the back and tells you, okay, you missed, or okay, you hit them. That whole, the dungeon master describes, you state your intentions, and then the dungeon master brings out the resolution, like resolves it. That's the loop of D&D. That's just constantly going over and over and over and over. Unfortunately, Infocom games, text-based adventures, are not as prevalent as they used to be, so you can't really use that as an example to get people up to speed on what it is. So anyway, this is my spreadsheet. This is the name of the creature. This is the book that it's from. This is the monster manual, the MM. These are how many I need. So there's actually, let's say if we look down through this list, there's 451 monsters in the monster manual, but if you'll see, like with zombies, I need 15 of them. I wanted a nice big fleet so I could have like the scary horde. So just because there's 451 monster kinds, it doesn't mean that I have 451 monsters minis to paint. I actually have more than that. And so the way I categorize this is just kind of like progress here. I state how many I need, whether I found an STL for it, whether I've supported it, printed it, cleaned it, primed it, how big of a base it requires so that I can make sure that I print those off ahead of time. And then how many I have painted. So like this awakened shrub, I have 2. I needed 2, I painted 2. And I have some conditional formatting that once I type the same number, it colors it makes it say done and it colors it green. This little subbed column over here is if I have a mini that's close enough. So for example, I don't have a black bear. I found a mini for it, or STL for it. I only need 1, but I don't have a black bear. I do have a cave bear. No, I don't have a cave bear either. But if you notice, these things are subbed. Maybe I have a brown bear? I have a bear of some kind. No, not a brown bear. I have a bear of some kind, and he's on here. Maybe it's just his... I don't know. But these are checked because I can use my brown bear on here. So like there's like, I could have a wolf and I could have snow wolves. I can use my wolf for the snow wolves until I get those painted. You know, something like that. And oh man, the dragons, I color coded these things because there's just so many. There's like 4 or 5 of each. 4 of each, and some of them have some special ones. Like a red shadow dragon. But yeah, these things go from the wormling, which is the very smallest, are medium, and then they go up to gargantuan. And so that means they're going to be like this. and that's going to take a while. I'm probably going to not be able to print these until I get a better or bigger resin printer. But we just did a Chimera. A, B, C, D, C-H. Chimera. One painted, and it's done. Yay! I need a Twitch thing that does yay claps or something whenever I check one of these off. Did I ever do my Planetar? Elemental P. Yes, I did. So, if we scroll all the way down to the bottom, I've painted 262 minis so far. So I have to have a thorough list and track it, or else I'll never know how close I am to being done. And if I don't know how close I am to being done, I'll give up on it, because it'll just feel like an endless pile that is impossible to do. These ones here on the bottom, these gray ones, you can see some of them are with the Dungeon Master's Guide, Volo's Guide to Monsters, Player's Handbook. These are actually NPCs. I got the idea of, I'd like a male and female of every race. So like a male dwarf and a female dwarf, a male human, female human, elf, blah, 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 blah. Just in case an NPC came up. But these are like super low priority. And I already like see these humans. I already had some commoners that I did, and I have a couple tieflings that I can use. I have 2 turtles, but only one of them is painted, so that's not marked done yet. I have dwarves in here. I've got a bunch of dwarves. How come I don't have dwarves on here? That's a Dwagar. Where's my dwarves? Where's my dwarves? There they are. 7. Oh. It's because I have one that's not painted. I have a dwarf that's not painted? Surely not. Oh, no, I already painted that one. This actually needs to be... Yeah, and I added him to the bandits. So he's already counted, so that needs to be 6. So yeah, we're done there. Hey, Ice! Welcome to the stream! We just finished painting the Chimera. Let me show you. I know this camera's not the best, but we got some cool little deets, some details on them, some deets. Actually, you know what, let me swap back over here so I can show you. Yep, there we go. Got them all finished up. Not my best work, but I think it's enough to scare the crap out of the players. And so what we're gonna do now, I think I'm feeling Hydra. I think I'm going to do the Hydra rather than the character book. What time is it? So we're about an hour-ish, hour and 20 minutes in. Let's do the Hydra. Let's go ahead and save that. I use Pressure Slicer for my model modifications. Here we go. And let's do manufacturing. No, not marketing. Let's do manufacturing. There we go. Photon. Monsters. Where's my Hydra? There's my Hydra. Body. 6 heads and a tail. I was right. No, so this is a little bit of a weird, little bit of a weird setup. I use, what do I use for my FDM stuff? Pretty sure I use Cura for my FDM stuff. Yeah, I use Cura for FDM stuff. I use Pressure Slicer for resin stuff, but really I use it for making the supports. So let's go back to Hydra. Hail Alright, so this has already been sized for my photon. Oop. You know what? I'm going to move this onto this side so that it's, and let's just keep it all on this side so it doesn't get in the way of chat. And there we go. All right. So this has already been sized. So this is like my print bed right here. And we can see he's got like a little bit of a finger poking out, so that's why he's blue. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to rotate him. Probably going to go this way. And then like there. Yeah, because I don't want supports on those spines on the back if I can help it. I'm cool with supports on the toes. That's going to be connected to the base. Yeah, all the different heads have already been popped into their own STL, as well as the tail. I think I'm going to try and bring it down to... no, that's not it. That's not enough. So the problem is that the box fits. You can see it on the bottom here, but the bases that it generates, a little platform, it's gonna poke out around that. So I'm probably gonna have to go a little bit more. I'm probably gonna end up getting supports on there. I don't like that, but what you gonna do? Okay, well, we'll try that. We'll see what we do. All right, so actually the first thing... Oh, no. This one's going to be a little bit of a pain. Because he's a big boy. I have an idea. Let's get him back. Get him back like this. Let's go like mesh. That's gonna put supports on all of those things. But what if we... Oh yes, here we go. If we go like that, now he's gonna have supports on his toes because they're gonna go up like that. But these are just gonna grow up off the body. Yep, that's the winner right there. I might have one right there, but all of these are just going to grow straight up. Yes, yes. That's the way to do it. The only downside is it's going to take longer because it's taller. The taller it is, the more time, because you have more layers to print, more layers to cure. I'm not sure. It's not big. It's like 2.5 by 4 maybe, or something like that. It's really small. But okay, so what we're going to need to do, normally what I would do is I would pop into the supports and I would auto-generate them under there and start ticking away like normal, moving supports into specific places. And this is a big guy, and so I don't want it to eat up all my resin. So we're going to hollow it. We want to hollow this object. Now you might be like, hey John, I thought you said you were going to hollow it. That doesn't look hollow. You know, there's nothing different. How can you tell? So it has this cool little clipping view here. So if we go, let's go like that. It's going to start from where you're at and slice through. So it's like just like how you would view slices, but it's going to use the camera. So it's like if I go like this and then I move it, like I already started slicing it the other way. So now I can kind of view it. But if I start to slice in and then I hit reset direction, it's going to work off of my camera. So now it's kind of slicing in like this. So if you use the number keys 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it gives you different angles. So I want to go off of this one here, reset the direction. We'll dig into it a little bit so that we can just kind of see what's going on. No, it's not just infill. I'll show you. It's interesting. And so what we'll do, I will just leave the defaults, wall thickness, accuracy, blah, 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 blah. And we'll say preview, hollowed, and drilled model. This is a little different thinking than FDM printing. FDM printing is additive, where you're squirting out lines like a cake, and then they're building on top of each other. And so you're thinking upwards, right? You're thinking a scaffold, or like a foundation, and then you're building scaffolding, and then you're building your 3D print, and it has to rest on the scaffolding for the supports. So you're trying to think of almost like gravity and weight pushing down. If you have an arch that's coming out, you want your supports so that when the filament is out there, it doesn't fall, right? You're thinking downward motion. Resin printing is a little different because everything is upside down. You have, so like this plate right here, this is the bottom. We should actually be looking at it like this, because the little blue arrow, this plate is going to sink down into the vat of resin. It's going to flash cure that layer, and then it's going to pull up. And so this is a different kind of force that you need to be aware of. Instead of gravity pushing down on something, you're yanking it. Well, it's going to cure against the light. Like it's going to have the resin against the light. The build plate's going to push against it. It's going to cure it, and then it's going to pull it apart, and it's going to create suction because it's liquid in there. And it's going, like if you look at it, or if you listen to it, you pop a little lid off of it and listen to it. When it's pulling those first couple layers, you'll hear it go like every minute or so, because it cures like a minute on the first layer, and so that's a lot of force that is having to. So it's gonna squish and push the resin in, make a little liquid resin barrier in there. It's gonna cure it, and then it's gonna pull it off, let the resin fill in, and then push it against it again, cure it, and then pull it off. So when you're putting on supports, those supports there has to be enough, and they have to be strong enough to pull against that suction. Otherwise, it'll break them off. With FDM, you're worrying about gravity. You're worrying about just making sure there's something under there, so that when you're printing it, that stuff doesn't droop and drag. That it has something to build on top of. But this is a little different because you're dealing with forces. Well, you're still dealing with forces with gravity, but it's like a mechanical force. It's not too crazy. Like, you just kind of have to be aware of it. Once you kind of wrap your mind around it, it makes a lot of sense. So there's a couple things to be aware of. When you hollow it out, the accuracy here, so if I crank this accuracy up and I preview this again, it's going to try to match the outside of the model directly with the inside. We don't really want that. It's slicing or hollowing it out. Okay, it actually didn't. Okay, so you see how it's got like these little angles in here? And it actually went up the leg, and it's holding a little, it's holding closer to like the actual shape of the mini outside. We really don't want a lot of angles because we don't want supports inside. we can do supports inside. They're just not going to cure, and they can cause issues with draining, which is another thing that we need to be mindful of. So if we drop the accuracy around, it's going to kind of like, it's going to take the model and kind of rub all the edges off of it, like tumble it in a rock tumbler, and then it's going to shrink it a little bit and stick it inside and cut out that. That's kind of the process. Let's hollow you out real quick so we can see you. Okay, so that's a little better. So one of the things that we need to do is we need to, now that this is hollowed, we need to be aware of where it's hollowing. So like in the legs, looks like it's hollowing in the body. Pretty good. So that's pretty decent, and we can kind of get a better idea of it by like coming like this and resetting the direction, and we'll look at it from this angle. So it's going to look like that. Now, some of the things that we're going to need to be mindful of is that, have you ever like taken a cup of water? I almost grabbed my paint cup and flipped it upside down. You ever taken a cup of water or a cup and like put it in the bathtub and went bloop, 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 and let all the air out and pulled it up to the surface, and it comes up above the surface, and now the cup's full of water above the water level? Ooh, I'm a crazy 5-year-old who's learning science. It's full of water, right? Well, that is going to happen with a hollowed model. Once it starts printing a layer, like if we come over here to slicing, remember this thing's upside down. These bigger models, once you start hollowing them out, they take a little longer to slice. Looks like my camera's being slow because of, I put supports on it too. Okay. I didn't ask for that, but you know, we'll have to get there eventually. So if we drill down through the layers, all right, say we get around right here, and remember that this is upside down. All right. If you notice, we have a little cup. So when we got to here, you know, we were just kind of printing these layers. It drops down, pulls up, drops down, pulls up, drops down, pulls up. And get a nice little flat base, and this is where it would get into the solid stuff. But now we have like this little pocket in here, right? That is not going to be full of air. That is going to be, it's going to submerge into, it's going to stay like under in the resin, and it's going to pull up about this much, and then it's going to go back down and up and 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 down. And as this whole thing starts to get printed and is drawn out of the resin and it gets larger and larger, all of your resin's going to get sucked up into that thing. And eventually, like, it's going to be higher than the amount of volume actually in your little vat, and it's just going to cause problems. We don't want that to happen. That also puts a whole lot of weight, all of that liquid resin, up inside there with the suction, and when it pulls on those supports, you're likely to break your supports. You don't want that to happen. So what we do want to happen is we want to dang it, I don't want supports on here yet. This is just gonna remove all the points. Yes, I know. Now I'm gonna get errors. Stupid program's trying to be helpful. Okay. Actually, we want to reset it here and then go down. So what we want to do is we want to drill some holes. We're going to bore some holes into this thing so that when it's upside down, moving up and down like this, that there's air. Air is able to seep into the top and that will keep it from, like, as it'll equalize the pressure, and the resin level will stay the same inside. It also helps that once it is done, and it'll go and rise up out of, like, a good way away from the build, like the sensor. If you let it sit there, it'll naturally just drain all of the resin out, and you won't have to wash it out and mess with all of that stuff. Yeah, like it functions the same, but understanding it upside down helps you work through it a little better. But yeah, so it'll sit there and it'll drip. And so another thing that you want to be mindful of is if there are any pockets inside that are going to have like little pools of resin in them, because then you're going to have to take the mini and turn it sideways and, you know, around and get it to drain all the resin out. If you can get a hole on the top and poke a drain hole on the bottom, and make sure that the inside is thick enough and not weird enough of a shape that it doesn't have these little pockets to make little pools of resin, then when it comes out, it's just going to all drain out nice and clean. You just dump it in your alcohol and rinse all of the stuff off, and you don't have a lot of mess. The worst you have to do is figure out a way to plug up the holes, which isn't going to be a problem with this one, because this thing has these wonderful little sockets. We're just going to drill right through some of these sockets where the heads are going to slot into, and once those slot in, it's going to cover up the hole. It's going to be fantastic. So we're going to drop one right here. Once you're in the hollow and drill part, if you just click on the model, it will, you can kind of see it right there, it'll drop these little cans, these little cylinders, and it's just going to generate a hole there. So we can just slot that into here, center it a little bit, and you can, these settings right here, this is the diameter, you can make it bigger, smaller, you can just adjust it, and then you can change the depth. So, not that one, this one here. So you can, you gotta select it first. So you can make it, if it has to penetrate through a really thick part of the wall, you can do that. Or if it's just barely shadow, but you want to make sure that it's shallow, not shadow. You want to make sure that it's poking through. And then when we click preview, yeah, it's going to tell us, yeah, I know we don't have supports. Shut up. Invalidate. Oh man. Or disable supports. How do I disable supports? Supports, none. Maybe I can do that. Hey, that worked. Awesome. And now it has actually, like, drilled the physical hole. Like, you can see through it. It's actually modified the model. I have run into some weirdness where you can see, like, the polygons, like here, all these triangles, these are tris. I have run into weirdness that's happened where I'll put a drill across a really large triangle and it doesn't know how to interpolate around it, and it can cause like some weird glitching on the layer. But that's like advanced stuff. And so it looks like, I'm trying to see if this is the lowest part. Okay, so right there. So we're gonna have a little puddle right there. And we're going to have a little puddle right here. Just a little bit on the bottom. It's not too bad. Normally you want to like drop this down as low as you can. And then put the hole at the bottom. Another thing you can do, let's just take a look through the rest of these real quick. Oh man, that's going to be great. Because see, like, even up here on these upper legs, it's just going to slope down. Yeah. Cusco, the poison for Cusco. Selected specifically for Cusco. Right. Yeah, that's going to work great. That's going to... Well, no, I'm thinking of this backwards. Remember, this is upside down. Hey, Jalapeno! We finished up the Manticore, and now we're slicing the Hydra. So, thinking again, we're thinking upside down. This is actually the air hole. This is not the drain hole, because this is going to be on top. So, like, it still gets me every time. So what we need to do is we need to bring this up top. Actually, you know what we need to do? We need to come from the bottom, reset our camera direction there. Yeah, so two. So the one on the bottom is actually going to be the one for resin, and since this is upside down, we need our, and see, this is going to, okay, now this is going to be a problem, because if I put the hole right here in this socket for the tail, it's going to leave these two big puddles, like right there. See, those are like this, the resin's going to drain out through that middle hole, but then it's just going to fill up and make these little ponds. It's not the worst. It just means that it's not going to be, I can't be lazy about it. Like if I got it, if it was the other way, then I like wouldn't have to do anything. I could just like let it sit for a day or so and drain, or like sit overnight and drain. This one, I'll have to break it off the supports, flip it upside down, and let it drain. So it's not that big of a deal. It just kind of would have been nice. I think I'm not going to mess with it. I think I'm going to just drill through. Yeah, drill through here. So let's pop another borehole on there. And let's make this one a little bigger. Because the tail only needs to slot, like it's gonna be mostly bound by the square hole, and it's gonna catch on these edges. So we'll go like that. Check our depth. Our depth looks okay. Go a little bit more, just because we can. Preview. There we go. Now we have a hole there. And we have a little hole there. We can see through the middle of our model. Alright. So now we got it hollowed. Now comes the annoying part. So we're going to say supports everywhere. Yes, I know. Cannot proceed without support points. Of course. I mean, I'm just turning it on. Let's make some support points. Let's set it to 110-ish. Yeah, 113%. That's fine. Auto-generate. And it's slicing down here, generating supports. This is the progress down here, and then it's got a little progress bar over here. See them? They're popping on there. There it goes. There's all of our supports. So yeah, our fins didn't need too much. Probably doesn't even need that one, to be honest. Sometimes this thing can be pretty dumb about it. Like, why would you need one right there? It's like literally on the bottom. Oh yeah, I can't just pop back and forth between them super quick because it gets slow as Christmas. Okay, so here's the problem. When you're generating supports, normally what we do is we swap into manual mode, and we grab these little guys and we move them around, or we can add more. We move them around. Bing, bang, boom. I gotta wait for it to generate supports again. The reason it's taking forever to generate supports is not necessarily because it's a large model. It's because there are so many supports. Now this doesn't actually like look like more supports than normal. But if we go to our clipping view, it's generating supports all up through the middle. Now, we're gonna need some of these. but we're not going to need all of them. And it just really slows things down. You also really can't get them out. You know, like I don't like having hollowed a model just to fill the thing up with resin again in supports, right? That's kind of dumb. Kind of defeats the purpose of having a hollowed model if you're just, you know, it defeats the purpose of not wanting to print resin, cure resin in here if you're going to cure it for the supports. So a lot of times I will come in here and let's see here. Let's reset the direction. We'll go to manual. What are you doing? I don't want you to slice it. I want to see the stuff in there. Why aren't you showing me? What? Discard changes, thank you. Manual. Why is it not showing me all my points? What if we... That's weird. Maybe if we auto-generate some new points? I mean, we could see them just a little bit ago. There we go. Now we can see them. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually just going to come in here and just delete these all. Because the inside is rounded enough. Round surfaces, it's rounded enough that it shouldn't matter. And this is just really tedious. I've yet to find a way to prevent the adding of supports to the interior of a model, unfortunately. And it's just kind of boring. I apologize. This is not entertaining, but this would probably be a good time for a story. Good old D&D story. The tail socket up top is probably going to need some supports because it protrudes a good bit. You could get around that by thickening the walls so that it doesn't protrude so much. But I think I'm just gonna suffer through some supports in here and just call it a day. It's not like, so the inside, I really wish they had some special settings for this, because the inside of one of these minis, like if these supports break off, what it's gonna do is it's gonna make the inside look wobbly and weird. And that doesn't matter because you're not gonna see the inside. Like it'll flatten and compress a bit of the mini, like some of the features. It's not really going to do anything. Well, there's one. Let's see how many times I miss a support and end up adding one, because man alive, that happens a lot. And I'm just clicking these and hitting delete. That's nothing fancy software side. Those actually were on the outside, but I like to manually control where they are. Okay. So now let's flip her upside down and get the other half. That was the bottom. Lord knows why they had supports on the bottom. You support the underside of things, not the top side of things. This is where all of the goopy goops are. D&D story. What's been happening in our game? Oh, you know what? I've used a Hydra before. It was on a it was in our Hall of Champions. Ice. I don't think I've talked about Hall of Champions on the stream. Luke Rum, Jalapeno, and Lemon Bud. I don't know if you've been. Oh, there's another one. That's 2. I want to say that you were. Were you in one of our Hall of Champions? Maybe you weren't. Maybe I just wished you were. Because I just think you're awesome. So the Hall of Champions was a thing that I came up with. For those of you who are not aware of, I was a player in my work game, and sometimes our DM would get burned out, like DMs do. D&D is a very creatively demanding game. It can be very mentally exhausting, and sometimes he just need a break. And so I whipped up this thing called Hall of Champions, and it was supposed to just be like a combat simulator. I was still a very new DM, and I wanted to kind of experiment with running monsters in special scenarios. Oh, there's 3. And you know what? Let's do a fun thing here. We'll keep track of it there. So yeah, it was like a combat simulator, almost like the X-Men's Danger Room. I wanted it where players could try out new character types that they've been like working on, to see if they liked the classes that they hadn't played, or if they would just want to try out a new character. I had a system and oh, there's 4. Dang it. I had a system where, like, if they won, then their Hall of Champions character got some magic items. They'd roll on a crazy loot table, and it was all very bombastic and silly and fun. It ended up eventually, like all D&D games do, the crazy goofy game ended up developing a story, and players got invested and whatnot. But originally it was just supposed to be like a danger room that they would go in and kill a monster and get some loot, and that was it. It was like a short thing. It took me like, I don't know, 30 to 45 minutes to prep one of these. It was like almost no prep. I would just pick a monster, throw it into the arena. Oh, there's 5. Throw it into the arena. I didn't even have to make a map. I would just take the arena and maybe like theme it towards the monsters. So if it was like, I think that, well, so with this Hydra, they went up against this Hydra. I made it like swampy, and I tried to design an encounter around it, and it was really fun. They would all wake up in this round room, made of like white marble, and there was this guy named Halav, who was like this bald old elf with thick glasses and a chrome dome head. Oh, there's 6. That's right, you played in Starfinder. And he would talk like Droopy Dog, and he would be like, "Welcome to the Hall of Champions. If you die, it will not be held against you." I mean, there was like rules where like characters couldn't die, so they could bring their characters from campaigns, and with the DM's permission, if they won any magic items, they could bring them back to the campaign, and that was kind of fun. But it was so that our dungeon master, when he got burned out, dang it, when he get burned out, I would just be like, I could run Hall of Champions. That way we'd still get to play, because it's really important when you have a D&D group that even if you can't play, that you get together and do something, because it's more about maintaining your group of friends and hanging out and spending time with each other than it is of we must now partake of the D&D. D&D demands that we spend time on it. Oh, we still got some more down here. So yeah, Hall of Champions, super duper fun. I haven't done it in a long time. Now that I'm DMing, I'm not gonna, when I get burnt out, somebody else needs to run Hall of Champions, not me. But I ran a Hydra in the Hall of Champions once, and I'm trying to remember how it went. Man, that was a long time ago. I remember it was a Hydra. It was submerged in water because like the arena was kind of small. There wasn't a lot of room to wiggle around, and there was a bunch of, what are the frog guys called? Not the ones that start with G. What's the D&D frogs? I want to say it starts with a D. No, not frog. Come on. It's not these guys. It's these bullywugs. That's what they are. These are called grungs. Not those guys. Bullywugs. Not frogmen, you idiot. There was a bunch of bullywugs, and they were like minions. They were super duper weak, but they were there to kind of like, if people had a hard time hitting the Hydra or whatever, they could like, help do some crowd control. All right, let me rotate this around real quick. Make sure that I got everything. Sometimes I like to like cut it at different directions. You can't just go 50% and then rotate it all the way around and 50% because sometimes there'll be one sitting right in the middle, like right on the mark, and it won't show up on either of them because it's not rendered. Yeah, that looks like all of them. All right. Now let's apply these changes before I accidentally discard those and shoot myself. See how much faster that sliced? It sliced so much faster. Now what we're going to do, before we continue our story about the Hydra, we're going to slice it. This still takes a minute, but it always takes a minute. There we go. Now, for those of you who have not seen the regular process, once we get it supported, this is all of the layers. It shows the numbers of them here. You can use the arrow keys to tick up and down. It gives you another arrow on the bottom that you can like slice up if you want to look at it that way. But what I like to do is bring it down from the top. Come on down, bring it down, bring it down. And we're looking for islands. The supports are pink, obviously, and orange is the resin material. That's the printed material. So what we're going to do is we don't want, so essentially if we're thinking of this upside down again, we want it to lower down and touch onto the build plate, or onto the screen, because like this is the build plate and then the screen is like below it. So this is going to squish down, contact the screen. It's going to flash an image that's going to cure the resin, and then it's going to raise up. Now imagine, if you would, right here where my mouse is, if there was like an arm that like touched down here, some knuckles on the ground, and it was right here, and there weren't any supports, what would happen is that this screen down here would flash and cure that resin. The whole thing would lift up, and that would just sit there on the screen. And then it would come back down. The image would move over a little bit, right, because it's doing the next layer. It would flash and cure that resin. It would move up, but this would still stay stuck to the screen, and it would turn into like a little blob that like grows out. It's like a single layer though. It's like it's not very thick. Sometimes they can like detach just because of like the, not the waves, but like the motion of the liquid, and they'll float around and they can like hit other things. So anything that gets cured has to have some supports to latch onto it to pull it up away from the screen. And this is like having a little circle out here with no supports on it. That's what we would call an island, because it's just sitting out there by itself. And so the way that we can look at that is, so like this here, this little toenail, if we pay attention to this support here, it's going to, I'll make cursor up so that we can see it a little bit better. It's going to go up, 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 and see there, that's when the toenail geometry starts to appear. Now it is worth noting that this is all just going to cure as resin. So like this layer, if I stopped the print there, it would just look like a circle. It's not going to have orange in the middle. But that's where the geometry from the model and the geometry from the supports intersect. And then you can see, oh look, it's going to pop out to the side a little bit. And now it's going to start growing out. And this, if we're thinking about it upside down, if we go like this, see, it's gonna make that little island right there. It's gonna boop pop, and this is going to go up and then down and up and down. It's gonna pull it away from the screen. And so this support needs to be strong enough. This little connection right here needs to be strong enough and at a firm enough angle that when it pops this up, it doesn't break. Because if that breaks, then this is just going to float around, and it's gonna mess with the model. It's gonna cause artifacting. If you ever look at, let me see if I have one. I know I have some. Here we go. This Ankylosaurus. Let me show you him. If my paint job is bad enough, you might be able to see the layer lines. But if you look at this Ankylosaurus, you can kind of see that little line right there? How it cuts across his back. It's got that little highlight on it right there. So it kind of comes to a point right here. There was a problem with that layer. And it may have skipped one layer, and so what happens is that it continued printing on, but it compressed a couple of those layers together, and it creates this little ridge. If it misprinted, because you can actually see, I'm super lazy, you can see these speckles. Those are not details of the mini, those are from supports. But I was like, hey, you know, it looks like dinosaur speckles, so I leave them on there. Well, what could happen is that if these supports broke off, you know, while it's like this, pulling it up, that top part of his back is actually detached. It's sitting there while he's getting pulled up. And instead of it building up and growing off of him, it's just sitting there. But then eventually what'll happen is that it'll come down and connect to another part around it that doesn't need the supports, and it'll reattach with a strong enough bond to this material around it that it'll reattach to the model. And so what it does is it, like, this should have been a bit more rounded, but now it's like squished flat because those layers got compressed into each other. There was another one that I did. It was a goblin. And it was the funniest thing, because he looked kind of like this little fish man. He had like a spear, and he popped off of the supports, and it compressed it squished the whole thing down, like into a flat pancake. And if you looked at it from the top, it looked like that, but it was just like slightly rounded, but it was just like squished flat. It's like you took the model and just went whack. Because it kept building like slightly up on top of itself, but the supports were all messed up, so it was just like ba-bunk bunk. It was dumb. So just be mindful of that. So we're looking for these little islands. So, and we're wanting to make sure that there are big enough supports. So typically, I like to add a bit more supports than normal, which is why I crank this up to like 113% when I auto-generate them. So I'm going to, especially at the beginning parts, because like once there's like enough of the model that these supports are like attaching to the top of the foot, like that creates a firmer base. And then once this leg attaches to the rest of the body, then it gains the benefit, the distribution of all of the other supports. So it's really on these smaller parts here that you want to make sure you have some good ones. So I'll add like 2 or 3 more to these toes. Something like that. And this is why round stuff is nice, because like this toe here doesn't even need supports, because it's round enough that it'll just whoop, and it'll just go out, and it'll grab it. Now normally an angle like that is, this is another difference, Lemon Bud. Are you still in here, Lemon Bud? Oh, I don't see you. Hey Rogue Girl, welcome to the stream. We are doing supports on a Hydra. So normally, if you look at this thumb here, this toe on the side, with an FDM printer, you would want supports up under here because you're thinking of gravity weighing down. Like if it pushes out like that on an FDM printer, it'll droop, right? You need some supports under there for gravity. But remember, we're upside down. So when it gets to this part, it's actually, what you're having to think of is that it's going to stretch out to the side. It's going to cut off right here, and then it's going to pull it up. And so you just want to make sure that it's that there isn't any suction, like it can disconnect and just kind of flip out there for a little bit and then go back down and then pull out like that. You want to be mindful of like this kind of motion, because you don't want it to accidentally break. So if it was like super fat on the outside and thin on the inside, then that would create like, you know, almost like a baseball bat hanging out there, and then it could just like and then break off. But as long as it's thick and fat, it's perfectly fine. Just a different way of thinking about supports. So all right, so we added those supports to the toeses. You know what? Let's go ahead and add them to the feet up top too, because those are going to need them as well. Especially since this model is so big. You know, these look tiny, but this will be fun. Let's pull in Fang. Fang is a mini that I use to scale things. I call him Fang for scale. Here we go. What? Oh. Is it an iCloud thing? Yeah, it is. Let me download that real quick. There we go. There's Fang. So you can kind of see the size of this thing next to a regular mini. Normally you're dealing with like making sure that fingers that size are supported and islands are you know, and you'll put bigger stuff on like the blade of the sword, but look at this thing's foot. His toe is like the size of his arm. So we need a lot more supports on it because there's a lot more weight. A lot more force. Alright, so let's go back to slicing. Come on, slicer, no slicing. Alright, let's look for islands. Another thing you can do is hover your mouse over and then just scroll. It can be a little fast, but it kind of helps you get through the dull parts. Okay, so this is interesting over here. This we're going to need to pay attention to. So that is good. If it's in the center of these little spots, that's perfectly fine. It can reach out about that far and be okay. Once it gets out to like there, you're actually like, you think that that's a good bit further. It's actually fine because now it's thicker, and it's got like that's going to be perfectly fine. This one, however, I think it's trying to balance between this one here and that one there, and that is no good. Like that, when that pulls up, it's gonna bend right there. It's gonna pull that up, and that's gonna still be stuck, and it's going to break off. Now, that actually might not be that big of a deal, because that means it's just gonna compress those layers together, and by the time it gets there to there, this part will just be like squished flat and a little smoother. But I wanna fix that up. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna flip it around. We're gonna go back to our object, go to manual, and it's these two right here. It's this one and this one. So we're gonna drop this in the middle. Let it slice. Let's see if I can close some of these other programs, so maybe this will go faster. Yeah, that's better. Check that out. So now on that first layer, bam, it's supported on this side and that side. Yeah, that's a lot better. All right. You know what? I'm going to scooch this over and widen this out. All right, there's another one. And actually, I might just grab this one and move it over. Exercise in patience. There we go. This kind of work is actually kind of chill and relaxing. Coming together okay. Got a couple up there. Those ones look okay. They're close enough in the middle. That one, if that breaks off, it'll catch up by there, so one layer is fine. I also have a little... Yeah, that'll be fine too. I also have a little bit of a benefit to using a Photon Zero. At least this is my theory. I haven't proven this yet. But my Photon Zero is a lower resolution screen, so it's lower definition, and the layer lines aren't as thin as a Photon. And so I think that since my models are overall... I was worried about that circle there, but I think that looks okay. It'll work out. I think that overall, I can kind of fudge some of these islands because it's a lower resolution and it ends up working out okay. So that's terrible. That's just like a straight up island. It's just sitting right there. That one, and it's hoping to get it by there. If we drop one of these in the middle, then that'll work out just fine. we go. Well, that's fine. That'll just compress into the next layer. You can also start to tell where connection points are going to start happening because the supports will narrow. So like this one down here, it's much thinner than these. It's going to hit something soon. Yeah, see, there it goes. So you can kind of anticipate. All right, I think we're pretty well done on the outside. Now we need to like start paying attention to the inside, because remember we stripped out all of the points on the inside, so we're eventually going to need some. And see, there's that thumb. See, pops out, and that's like about within the tolerance of when we were, you know, those islands down at the bottom. So it's perfectly fine. And then like that's kind of long. If that was just the first layer like that, that'd be a problem. But look, it's like it's already that thick, so it's gonna be fine. No problems, man. And that was another reason why you see these little dorsal fins. I don't know if these are dorsal fins. These little fins on the back, but they really don't need supports, because as they come out, see, that's fine. And since they're rounding upwards, they just completely take care of themselves. Now, if you would have had this upside down, like if we would have flipped this model around, it would be like the toes, like you'd need supports under every tip as it grows up and connects to the body. That's why I wanted to print it this way as opposed to the other way. I had it the other way first. Alright, so let's go back to the inside. See how this is just like a nice round shape, and it just moves very slowly? Slowly moving shapes like this are going to print just fine. Now we should be getting an island, a big island in the middle here. And that's going to be the back of the tail socket. Ooh, we got some little stuff happening here. That one looks okay. That one looks okay. Ah, there it goes. Okay. Now here's the thing. This is that geometry that's like whacking out. Some of the triangles lost their points, and so it couldn't render it. And so it's getting these weird artifacts. Now, this is going to... Oh, see, that's great. See how much that protrudes down? Right there? But since the whole thing's at an angle, it's like we probably don't even need to put supports on this at all, honestly. It had all of these supports so that this stuff would render okay, or that would be supported okay. But say we don't put supports here. What is it going to do? These pieces are going to stick to the... Remember, it's like this. These pieces are going to stick to the display, and it's going to pull off, and they're going to be stuck there. And then the whole model is going to lower back down, right around it. It's going to cure the next layer, and it's going to make it look a little wider. And then it's going to go up, and then it's going to come back down, and then it's going to go up, down. And by the time it gets to there, instead of it being that thick, it's just going to be super thin. It's like it's just going to compress those layers together, and then it's like it's got enough of a frame here that it's just going to start building up on it. So it's like that doesn't. We don't even need some supports in here. That one looks okay. I took a nap, y'all. I was up playing Astroneer past couple days to like 2 o'clock in the morning. Terrible, terrible life decisions. And I've been kind of sleep deprived, and I conked out at like 6 after I got off work. Slept for 2 hours. So if I looked a little bleary headed, that's because I was when I started streaming. See these little bridges? Yeah, they have the artifacting, and that's because these parts weren't modeled. This is Precious Slicer that hollowed this out. So it's like, this is algorithmic stuff. But it's inside the model, so it's not going to matter. See, those are fine. You know, that's actually got some thickness to it. I think that's going to be fine. Like, I'm a bit more lenient with this kind of stuff, because I'm kind of lazy, but also because if the next layer, if you go up one layer and it immediately joins, it's only got to do it once, so it's fine. These bigger, bulkier models that don't have really small, fine details tend to be more round, and the rounder it is, the easier it is to resin print. And we're pretty much done. Yep, we're done. We did it, guys. And that's it. That took like an hour. Yeah, that's the Hydra body. And so now, Hydra kids, Hydra wife. So now what we need to do is we need to go to File, Export. You want to export including the supports. Because technically, they are like two separate entities. Hydra body sup for supported. This is under monsters. And let's go back into the monster folder. Hydra body supported and green. I like to, wait, no. I'm using blue, not green. Right? Nope. Yeah? And yellow. Okay, I used yellow for supported ones. It's been a while since I've done one of these. I've been painting for so long. There we go. And I think that's all we got tonight, guys. It's 11:23. So that's supporting minis in or big minis with resin printing, and the kind of the gist of it. It does take a little getting used to, and kind of the math, or the process behind it, not really the math, but like the mechanics. That's the word I was trying to think of. The mechanics behind it is a little different than with mini printing or with printing on an FDM printer. Oh goodness, I'm sleepy. Oh, we can actually go back to. We can open up the spreadsheet and get that updated. Hydra. Hydra, there it is. STL found. Supported. Well, we're kind of supported. I'm going to leave it there because we haven't supported all of them yet. We'll leave it there, though. I didn't get to tell my Hydra story. Hydras are kind of cool, but we're going to have to go through the rest of these, so maybe we'll finish up the story the next time we do the heads and the tail. It's a pretty cool model. It's just like the heads socket into those square holes. But yeah, Hydras are pretty rad, and mini painting is printing is really neat. The difference I've noticed between using an FDM printer and a resin printer. With the FDM printer, I find that I don't have to do much with the models. I take a model, I drop it into the slicer, it just automatically puts supports under it, and I let it fly. And the issues that I have are like getting the filament settings right, really dialing in like the temperatures and the speeds and like all of that stuff. That is the hard part of FDM printing for me. That's the challenge. And now, granted, I have an older one. Maybe a lot of that stuff just isn't an issue on newer FDM printers. With photon printers, or like with resin printers, like I don't have to do anything on the printer itself. Like I ran like one calibration to figure out the curing time, essentially, of the resin that I was using. I just buy the same resin, and so I don't have to like retool all of that stuff. I probably should, but like it doesn't make much of a difference because you're curing it all anyway after the fact. But you really have to prep your models. Like on a resin printer, you do a lot of model work. On an FDM printer, you do a lot of work on the printer itself. At least in my experience, that's been the difference. But the cool thing is that once you get these things like supported and ready to print, you can just like drop them. Like I can just drop this on there and I could print 5 of them. Like I just load the file in there, but pour a bunch of resin in, let it print, and then it's, I've got 5 of them. It's just going to take 5 days to print it. Once I've prepped the model, I don't really need to do anything. Like with my FDM printer, if I wanted to print like 5 ships or houses or whatever, I'm constantly like re-leveling the bed and tweaking the thermal settings and making sure that this, that, and the other is working okay. Making sure that like the support density is all right, because I would miscalculate it on an overhang or something like that. I don't really have to do anything to the models themselves, but I'm always fiddling with the printer. And that's just one of the things I like about resin, is that it's just so easy. I'd love to get a big resin printer, like a big 7x8 inch panel. That would be super awesome. I would use that thing for so much. But FDM is nice. FDM is really hardy, and it's more pliable, and it doesn't. Resin shatters when it impacts and breaks. It shatters. FDM will bend before it breaks, so it's a bit more forgiving. But yeah, 3D printing is awesome, man. That's fantastic. I think I looked and calculated back through the amount of money that I've spent on minis, and resin is like 20 something bucks a bottle, I think. And I've gone through, maybe like in all of this time I've had that resin printer, I've probably gone through like 8 bottles. 2 bottles of clear and like 6 bottles of gray is what I use. And well, I've gone through 1 bottle of clear, and I have a bottle of clear that's full, but I haven't used it. But I've got like 8 bottles that I have purchased, whether I've used them or not. So that's like what? 8 times 20 bucks, $160. And then my resin printer I got for a steal. They were having a sale on it. I think I bought it for $160, so I've got like $350 ish, probably more, because I made that little curing chamber. So probably closer to like $400 in minis. And I was talking to my wife the other day. No, it wasn't my wife. It was Ike. Because he started like doing resin printing before me, and I was like, man, I was calculating this up. I've got like $400 tied up in all of these minis. And he looked at my big roll around case of minis that I have, and he was like, that's a really good deal. That many minis for $400. Like if I would have just bought all of those pre-painted and everything, it probably would have been like, you know, a couple grand or something, because they're like all custom painted and all that jazz. But that's also like $400 stretched out over, you know, 3 years or however long it's been that I've been doing this. And the cool thing is, like, once you make them, you put them on your shelf, you put them wherever you keep your minis, and then you can just keep using them, you know? Like, they're not going to go anywhere. It's pretty cool. Pretty fun stuff. This is my favorite hobby. I love D&D so much. I love all this crazy, kooky stuff. Alright, well, thanks hanging out for the Funzy stream. We only did a little bit of mini painting tonight, but I'm really excited to get this, Oh, actually, you know what? What time is it? It's 11:30. No, I'm out of time. I was gonna say we could go ahead and put it on the slicer and get it printing tonight, but I think that's pushing it. I have to work in the morning. Next time, Saturday, we'll probably, let's see, what are we gonna paint on Saturday? We're done with the Chimera. I think I want to paint something small. I think we're gonna do the Azure. I'm gonna do this guy. He's just a little flamey fire elemental smithy boy. I think we're gonna do him next. Something small, something I can knock out in a single night. I think that'll be good. Yeah, we'll do him. All right. Well, hey, thanks for hanging out in the stream. Thanks for giving me some company. I hope I was entertaining. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned a thing or two. Get a 3D printer. They're fun. They're super duper fun. All right. Well, I'll see you guys Saturday. Y'all have a great time, and be good.